JB Marks lecture for 2017, I was asked to talk about quantity and quality in relation to socioeconomic development. But because this is an audience of young people who have a particular experience of post-apartheid education, and because the purpose of the trust is to actually create a sense of a community of people engaging, I decided to respond to some of the questions that were posed to me by giving the questions to the audience.
The fact that our speaker actually chose, to sort of incorporate her questions and answers throughout the lecture really just sort of brought out whatever was bubbling inside each and every graduate that was here today, and really tried to actually address some of the issues that we encounter on a daily basis, and trying to come up actually with solutions as to how we could sort of better our society through the education system.
We first of all looked at issues of quality and access in basic education, and issues of who succeeds and who doesn't succeed. And we tried to explore where the inequality comes from. The students were very clear that a lot of the inequality is structural. It's race, it's class, it's the coincidence of race and class. It's issues of language, it's issues of poverty that are perpetuated, and privilege perpetuated in education. But what I found interesting about the group is that they, as young people 23 years after the start of apartheid, are also saying there are real challenges in terms of how government is using resources, not using resources, or even abusing resources, and that some of the problems we have could be resolved by a government that used resources more efficiently, more effectively, and without corruption.
Let us put the right people in the right places to make sure that they deal with the problems that our country faces.
Secondly, we need to have an education system that really, really goes into the heart of the actual skills that are needed out there, and that is tailor-made for the kind of people that we have in South Africa, not necessarily one that's copied from another country and implemented as is in this country.
The second question that I looked at was the issue of graduate unemployment. And my major challenge to the group of students for whom this is a personal problem and a personal concern is that the most privileged group in terms of access to employment are in fact graduates. That it's a very small percentage of graduates that are unemployed. And as a member of the JB Marks community, family of people who hold bursaries, our responsibility is to think about our contribution to the much larger number of young people who were not even able to get matric, the National Senior Certificate, because it is that group of young people who are not being able in any meaningful way to access full inclusion in society. They feel hopeless in terms of employment opportunities. They feel that they're not valued. They feel ashamed. They feel marginalized. And that if we want to have the future that the Freedom Charter promised us, that we claimed in our Freedom Charter, if we want to have the future that our Constitution promises us, that every person should be able to have the capabilities to achieve their potential, that is where the concerns of society should lie.
What I've really benefited is the fact that we as South Africans don't really look at the stats in the way that have an impact on our lives, especially when we just wake up every day and just carrying on with our lives, not doing the research that we need to know to see what really causes the economy of the country to be at the state that it's at. So what I've learned is that finding information for yourself also is very important, so that now you cannot put blame on people, but you can actually benchmark what is going on and what happened in the past so that you can determine the future.
the biggest challenge is to improve, to invest in those provinces which carry the greatest burden of the apartheid legacy. We need to, as a country, address the backlogs that are there in terms of infrastructure, water, sanitation, electricity. We need to be rigorous about making sure that money is properly used across the country, but particularly in those parts of the country which do not get adequate Auditor General reports. We need to support teachers much more than we do. We need to make sure that every child has a textbook. We need to make sure that we put as much emphasis on success in the primary school and in grade 8 and 9 as we put on success in matric. And we need to have an attitude towards young people that are not succeeding, that they don't feel that we have completely abandoned them, rejected them, and consider them to be unworthy. Very dangerous in society.
It was very important to have such a lecture because there are issues that we are not aware of. We think that everything in South Africa is hunky-dory. We got our freedom in 1994 and therefore everything else is equal. But it has been highlighted that the South Africa of before 1994 still exists in terms of differences in levels of education. Before 1994, you would find deficits in the so-called homelands, and even when the homelands have been dismantled, deficits are there in terms of your sanitation, in fact everything. Those former homelands were less resourced than other areas of South Africa. That is still existent even today.
One of the best lectures that I've personally heard. Very interactive and very informative. Views and reviews that I think as a country we need to look at. Very important in the education field for what Uncle JB actually loved for. And the values and morals which we're pushing back into, because as we all know, what you put in the beginning is what you get out at the end. So by starting off with good education would be one of the most important factors ever. And if us as educationalists is not doing that, then there is a need for change.
I thought that everything in South Africa could be better, and I kept looking at other countries and other milestones that other countries have reached as opposed to what we've reached, and looking at the positives that we have. So this lecture kind of reminded us of how not so bad we're doing, and that we also need to give props where props are due, and kind of work together as a workforce to enable change, be the change that we would like others to see, and be the dream changes in the world.